Warning, spoiler alert, spoiler alert. What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Derek Ruby Show. I am your host, the previously mentioned Mr. Ruby, and as we continue our Halloween month here on the Derek Ruby Show, and since I live in the great state of Texas, I thought I would take the time to go ahead and talk about the 1974 classic, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Now, a lot of people would definitely consider this movie to be the godfather of the slasher genre. The movie opens up in a very documentary-style fashion, with some words allowing people to believe that this is based off of a true story. The fact of the matter is, this movie was based off of a guy named Ed Gein from Wisconsin. He's a serial killer. I'm not going to go into a lot of the details, but look him up. This movie is not necessarily true. I mean, Psycho and Silence of the Lambs and many other films have been based off of Ed Gein. But it was a brilliant market strategy, and it definitely was effective, because even to this day, after 40 plus years, I still have to argue with my girlfriend daily about whether or not this movie was real. So one of the first things we see is a body that's posted up at a graveyard, and it's got some news clips and different things. It's got a very eerie setting to it. Now, while most franchises like Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street, Halloween all have their own themes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre uses a lot of basic sounds and music, but one thing that it does have is it has this very eerie sound. And that sound right there, put with the right clips and the right setting, is all you really need. It encapsulates everything about fear just with that one little noise. So as with most typical horror movies, we see a group of teenagers riding around in a van. They stop on the side of the road so he can take a piss. Car goes by really fast, knocks him over on the ground. But just FYI, anytime you see a wheelchair person in a movie, they usually have a bad attitude about everything because they're in a wheelchair, and more than likely are going to die. So the kids go driving around, and they pass the slaughterhouse, and they discuss the slaughterhouse a little bit, and then they see a man walking in the blistering Texas heat. And believe me, if you're from Texas, you know it's humid and it's hot down here. So they pick the man up. There should be a lot of red flags right at the bat. He looks like he has a blood stain on his face. That's number one. Number two, he has this weird maniacal laugh after every single thing he says. And then he begins to mutilate his hand right in front of everybody. Then he hands the knife back, and he pulls out a camera, and he takes a picture of them. After he takes the picture, he tells them it's a good picture, and that he wants $2 for it. And they say no. They also refuse to take him to his house as well. So he takes the picture, puts it on a little pan, sets it on fire, causes a giant ruckus in the car, grabs Franklin by the arm, and slices him with his knife. So he jumps out of the van, and he chases it down, and he's hitting the side of it. I'm sure this won't come back up later. I guess that'll teach you not to pick up hitchhikers. So they go to the gas station, and the man tells them that he doesn't have any gas. But he's got some barbecue, and gas will be by later. I'm sure it has nothing to do with that blood-stained mark that the guy put on the side of their van. So anyway, they go to the old house, they check it out. It's got a little bit of a spooky setup going on in there. You can tell it's been abandoned for a long time. So two of the kids leave the house and go swimming at a swimming hole that doesn't exist. It's obviously dried up over the years. And then they come upon another house because they decide that maybe they can get some gas for the van and see if they could ask their neighbors for some help. So they knock on the front door, the girl goes and sits down on the swing, and the door opens, and the guy keeps asking if anybody's there. And for some reason, he decides to walk into the house. Now, I don't know where you're from, but here in Texas, you don't walk into people's fucking houses. If you aren't invited in, you better not walk in, because it's probably going to be the end of you. And sure enough, it is. He hears a pig noise in this one room and decides to go over there. Now, I don't know why he was so excited about that to go run to the door, but out pops Leatherface and he cocks him over the head. And just look at the way the guy twitches on the ground. And then the girl, of course, she thinks the guy's playing around, and she goes to the door and decides to, again, walk into somebody's fucking house without being invited. And then she falls into this room, and the visualizations here are just creepy than a motherfucker. There are bones everywhere. There's a chicken hanging in a cage. There's skulls hanging. And, of course, she freaks the fuck out. Leatherface comes out. He chases her down. He gets a hold of her. She tries to get outside. He drags her right back in the house. He takes her into the back room, and then he picks her up and sticks her on a meat hook. Now, supposedly, this is the moment in movie theaters where people walked out all across the country. Because back in the 70s, you just didn't see shit like this every day. And after he sticks her on the meat hook, he proceeds to cut up her boyfriend right in front of her with a chainsaw. So we go back to our group of teenagers as they all sit around, and of course the smartest thing anybody ever does in every horror movie, one of them decides to go look for the others by himself. At least the Scooby-Doo gang, they were smart enough to split up together, you know what I'm saying? So this guy, just like the previous two, decides to go walk in the motherfucker's house again without being invited. Where are the fucking parents here? Did they not teach their kids any manners or etiquette? Needless to say, he hears some noises and he opens the freezer and he sees one of his friends in there and he freaks out and he gets conked over the head by Leatherface. Who immediately runs to the window to look to see if anybody else is there, and then we get a close-up of his sick, sadistic face as he just sits there and smiles with his tongue hanging out. So now it's nighttime, and the girl and wheelchair-bound boy, he's just sitting there arguing with her about the flashlight. He's the only one with a brain here. He thinks they should leave, but the other people took the keys. She keeps saying she's going to go, and he keeps telling her he's going to go with her, and then they start to go in the woods. So she's pushing him around in the dark on the wheelchair. And it's not too long before Leatherface comes out and he cuts him up. And she takes off running, and Leatherface is in pursuit, and she runs into the house and sees the man from the gas station that they saw earlier in the movie. And she's crying, and he tells her it's going to be okay, and he's going to go get the truck. And when he comes back with a big sack, she realizes that things aren't on the up and up, and she freaks out and picks up a machete, and then he proceeds to beat her with a broom, and he throws her in the car, and he drives her over to the house. Now, these are the parts where the movie just completely goes off the rails. At one point, they have the girl tied up at the dinner table. And just the sheer terror, it's not the stuff that you do see, it's the stuff that you don't see. There is a part where they just keep laughing and they keep doing close-ups of her eyes while she screams. And I'm telling you, your imagination just runs wild because you're not exactly sure what's going on. But you just keep hearing that sadistic laughing. So the guy that owns the store, he says he doesn't want to be part of it because he doesn't like killing people. Yeah, okay. And so they decided their old grandpa, he used to be the best, and therefore it should be him that kills her. So they pull her out of the chair, and obviously grandpa can't even fucking hardly walk or anything. And they keep putting the hammer in his hand, and they keep trying to club her over the head, and he keeps dropping the hammer. And they do kind of hit her a couple times, but not very well. And that sure says a lot about this family. After all, they want their elderly to keep active and participate. So the girl finally gets an opening and she runs away. She makes it out of the house and they chase her down. And the guy from the beginning of the movie, he runs out after her into the middle of the street and he gets hit by an 18-wheeler. The man in the 18-wheeler gets out, Leatherface comes up and he starts chasing him and the girl. And the man throws a wrench right at Leatherface and he cuts part of his leg. And the truck pulls up. And it screeches out, and the girl just jumps in the back of the truck, and she's just screaming frantically to go. And then we get one of the most memorable, iconic scenes in the movie as Leatherface picks up his chainsaw, and he's swinging it in the air. And that's the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So what did we learn today, kids? Number 1, don't pick up hitchhikers. Number 2, if a crazy person asks you to buy a picture that they took of you for $2, you do it. Number 3, don't go in fucking people's houses unless they invite you in, especially in Texas. And number 4, look both ways before you fucking cross the street. So the Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a classic horror film. You could call it the Godfather of horror. It's amazing what they were able to accomplish. I could just imagine what it would be like in the theater to think that this was real the whole time it's going on. It's not really a gore fest. There's just a lot of symbolism and a lot of stuff in the backgrounds that you see, and it just gets your mind working. The whole shot with her in the eyes and everything, it's not what you see that scares you in the movie, it's what you don't see. And I'm not saying that a lot of blood and gore is bad, but a lot of the horror movies, they missed the boat on this today. And the acting is done by a lot of amateur actors, but it seems a lot more real than a lot of professional actors would pull off. And I think that's what sums this movie up, is just the realism. None of the kills are just that over the top. Even the way the guy lays on the floor and he's twitching and just the things that happen, that's what makes it all the more scary, is that it does seem real. So I'm going to go ahead and give the Texas Chainsaw Massacre 5 stars. So thank you guys for listening to the Derek Ruby Show. I'm glad that you guys have been part of my Halloween month. Come back next week as we continue it. Do me a favor and hit the subscribe button. Tell me what you think about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Leave likes and comments. Check out all the social media pages. The links are in the description below. And I'll see you guys next time.